Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I am really excited for today's guest, Mr. Adam Adams. But before we bring him on, I have to ask you, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and you want to make sure that you leave us a 5-star rating and review or any feedback for the show so we can make this even better. With that said, I'm going to let Mr. Adam Adams come on the show and introduce himself. Adam, give us a little bit of background.
What's up? I'm excited, and it's nice to be back. And I know we're getting you back on my show too. So always just excited to collaborate with you. Adam Adams is my real name. We'll start there. My real name, legal name, had it for a long time. Never forgot my name. And other than that, I've been doing real estate investing also for a long time, since 2005, and did land and then got into multifamily in 2007. And then 2008, 9, 10, 11, there was a crash. A few things happened. And I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Hopefully your listeners already read it. It's a good one. And taught me that we're supposed to make as much money as we can in our job and to save money, like not to waste buying things on Ferraris, as he said. So I've started focusing, make as much money as I can and then put it to real estate. So I've been doing quite a bit of real estate, especially the last 7 years, really focused on it and went full time as well. So that's a little bit about me, and I like social media, podcasting, and meetups. If you want to talk about either of those, I love talking about them.
Absolutely. So Adam was a guest way back on the show. I'm talking episode 63, right? So we're going back to 2018, episode 63. And it was one of the first episodes that really dove more into the marketing realm beyond market research. And I love that episode. We'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. You gave some great tips on, starting a meetup and actually how you grew your meetup. And just real quick, before we get into some of the other stuff, from a meetup standpoint, Adam was very helpful for me starting out. I remember we got on a call. It was probably like 4 or 5 people. And this was, like I said, probably 2017 or 2018. And you talked about some of the things that you did to actually grow your own meetup. And in fact, you've been recognized by Meetup, the organization themselves, directly. Can you briefly just talk about that experience and maybe give a tip or two for anyone who's looking to launch their own meetup right now?
Yeah, for sure. And that was so fun. I've only been to New York City one time. Meetup's headquarters are in Manhattan, and I got an invitation. They said that they're flying out just their top 150 meetup organizers, but from around the entire world. There's like 255,000 meetups at the time in 2018 when this happened. But they wanted to fly me out, and they asked me if I could do a keynote presentation, if I could do a presentation in front of the 150 and all of their staff. And so that was so remarkable. It was one of the first times that I got paid to fly out there, paid to speak, paid. My hotel was free. They told me I could eat whatever I want, and even the wine. And I like it. I have high taste for wine, expensive taste. But the coolest thing that I'll say is that at the top floor, the 6th floor at Meetup headquarters, there's a whole bunch of engineers, and I got to sit down with the engineers because my meetup wasn't even that big. It wasn't that large in numbers. I think I had 1,300 people at the time, and now only 1,600 members, which everybody listening probably knows somebody who has a way bigger meetup. So it's like, why was Adam a speaker at Meetup's big event? And basically what the engineers told me is that there's a few things that you need to be doing if you want your meetup to grow and get in front of other people. One of the cool things that's a huge takeaway is if you already have your next meetup already scheduled, then, and it's already in the, it's up and posted on Meetup with the image card and everything. If it's already scheduled, then what happens is two things. Number one, Meetup trusts you more automatically. But number two, everybody who's in your Meetup gets an email and it says, keep it going. I hope you had fun today. Keep hanging out in this Meetup. Here's the next one that's scheduled. So they can't send that if it's not already scheduled. So that's one big takeaway. Another one is you want people to, well, back then you could have ratings and reviews for the Meetup. I don't actually know if that's still the case today, but I was one of the top people in the entire world with over 600 5-star ratings. And the reason why I think I had more than practically anybody in the entire world out of 225,000 is because we were meeting every single week. We would meet on every Thursday except for Thanksgiving, but we'd meet, 51 times a year. And we had a lot of people coming to the Meetup, mostly because of marketing and finding cool ways of getting people to be there. I can share with you on this podcast if you like me to. But one of the things is we had a lot of people, a lot of times, and I said one simple thing at the end. I always said, you're going to see this email. And you know how when you buy a white Jeep, because you thought that you never saw a white Jeep before, and you're like, I want something unique. And so you go and buy a white Jeep, but then the next thing you drive off the parking lot and all you see is white Jeeps. It's that recognition in our brains that happens when we're looking out for something that helps us to be able to see it. When we're asking, why can't I do this? Then we'll answer by figuring all the reasons why we can't. But how can I? Now our brain goes to that. Same thing. What I would say at the end of each one is, hey, you're going to see this email come out. It's going to ask you XYZ, like how we did. And all I ask is that you're honest. Because just like you said at the beginning of this episode, John, if you're listening, subscribe and give us some feedback. And I loved how you said that, because that's exactly how I would say it. Instead of, I need a 5-star rating and a review, which most podcasters are like, please give me a 5-star rating. Instead, you're like, I just want to know how to improve. So leave your feedback. And that was the exact same way that I was doing it back then during the Meetup. I would just say, you're going to get this, and I want you to just let me know what you think of it, what you think of it, pros and cons, so I can grow. So make sure you do that. And I didn't know that I was getting some type of algorithm hacked into Meetup headquarters, but because of those types of things, they called me. I was one of the only 2 people in the state of Colorado that were labeled as a super group. And I don't know what these super groups are fully, but apparently when you have a super group, they promote you instead of you promoting you. There's a whole bunch of other cool things that I would say. One of them is, instead of this is the third and final tip for Meetup that I'll share without you asking another question. This third tip is about the marketing to get people there. There's a lot of people, they suck at it, and like nobody's actually coming. And the main thing that I did was one-on-one calls, and I would have something in my mind of, what does this person want? What do they need? How do I put my feet in their shoes? How do I understand them, what they're looking for, and what's going to get them to come to this event? So other people, they say, oh, we meet every month, and it's just like, monthly event. That's all it says. And later on, when you are thinking, should I hit a monthly event? And you're like, nah, I could just go next time. So we always tried to have a marketing why they can't miss that one event. And I would do it on a phone call. John, it's Adam Adams. I know that you're doing wholesaling lately. Well, we've got a fix and flip event coming up with a whole bunch of fix and flippers. And since you're a wholesaler, and that's who you need to come, who you need to do business with, and they're some of the top in the state, I just wanted to personally invite you to make sure that you're there at this event and bring a lot of cards so that you can hand them out to all of these fix and flippers so you can start doing more business. So will I see you on Thursday? And it always works. So it's WIIFM. What's in it for me? What is in it for that other person? So you can still, you're at a fix and flip event, and you can call real estate agents, you can call lenders, and you can say the top real estate agents and fix and flippers and wholesalers are all going to be here. It would be a mistake for you to miss this. Can you get a babysitter? And they're like, okay. And you find a way to jumpstart that. And you'll get usually about 3 times the amount of people there if you're making one-on-one calls using that FOMO and what's in it for me, than you will if you just have it posted like most people do.
Boom. Listen, right out the gate, just fire, right? Just great tips right there for anyone running a meetup. I mean, some amazing tips. And the thing that jumps out to me is it's really about going that extra mile, right? It's one thing to just post the event, having it be on someone's radar, add it to your calendar. It's another thing to really help articulate what's in it for that user. What are you looking to do? This event's going to help you do that by, bringing XYZ together. But then also the personal touch, the phone call to reach out to these people. Very few people take the time to actually call and say, hey, we're having the same event we have each week or each month. But again, because of this speaker or the content that we're going to be covering, this is why it's unique. This is why you don't want to miss it. So I think that's really compelling, especially if you're having events at that level of frequency, because it can feel like just another event. But if you're able to customize it and push people, you can get more engagement. And I'm assuming part of that process was actually gaining their phone number on registration. So the first time they sign up, they give you their email, their phone number. So you kind of have that list, and they've kind of opted in at least to get these messages from you, right?
Yes and no. So we have something on the Meetup registry, like as they're joining our group, there's some required questions. And one of them is, and this is a great tip, place your email below to get regular, in case we change. I don't remember how it's worded right this second, just because I'm on the spot, but place your email below if you want real-time updates if we cancel an event. That's what it says, cancel, we post or cancel event, something like that. And so it's almost impossible to get people to give you their email. But if you say it like that, place your email below if you want this. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but closer to 80% of them are doing it versus 20%. Yeah. But on what you said about getting people's phone numbers, I would actually just call people that I already had their phone number. I met them at my own meetup and I got their card, or I met them at somebody else's meetup group, or I've collaborated with them, or I knew that they were in my industry, in my town, and I would just personally call them because I have their phone number. So it wasn't actually coming from the sign in when they joined, but I would just call people that I knew. And typically if 30 were registered, typically 15 would come. But if I also spent the time calling like 30 more people, then we would end up getting, 45 people at the event, which was awesome. So
I love it, man. I love it. Listen, great tips there. We'll certainly make sure we link to that episode where you go into even more detail. But I want to talk about what we're doing right now, right? Podcasting. I know that for you, you've taken this to a different place, and over the last couple of years, you've kind of built up your own podcast. I know you've sold a podcast, and you're really helping other people not only get into podcasting, but growing their podcast. Can you talk to me a little bit more about where you were with your podcast and how you started to realize that there was an opportunity here to help other people?
So with my podcast that I launched in 2017, I think it was literally while you and I met for the first time at Bigger Pockets headquarters and Joe Farrell's event. But I was launching the podcast at that exact time. I think I had it for like 6 months. And when I started out, it started super slow. And here was my thought was, if you build it, they will come. Like, I watched Field of Dreams a dozen times, or at least a half a dozen when I was young. And I remember just, if you build it, they will come. That pretty much happened with my meetup, but I did a lot of extra marketing. So with this podcast, I just thought that it was going to blow up, and I had like 20 downloads per episode. And I was publishing frequently. I was publishing often and consistently, but just wasn't really growing that audience. And so I started trying things that I'm kind of famous to be that person who tries to figure out how to get my mom to let me, go on a date late at night, or how to come home late one day or whatever. I'm famous for trying to figure out what are the buttons that I need to push to get the result that we need. And so we did that with Meetup. We do that with social media. And I started trying to figure it out on my podcast. It wasn't easy. It took a long, long time, but we tried all sorts of things. And then the podcast started taking off. And so we went from like 20 to like 100 to like 300 to over 1,000, then 1,300, then in the 3,000s. And I realized something after building the podcast to the numbers that I was looking for. So we had the downloads that I wanted. It was around 30,000 downloads per month. And so we had the downloads that I wanted. We had the listenership that I wanted. And I felt like we were really doing it. And then I realized that the name of the podcast wasn't wrong. I learned it the name of the podcast wasn't the type of name that would pull in the type of person that I wanted to work with. So there was really one main person that I launched the podcast for, and that was passive investors that wanted to let go of some money and put their money to work for them, let their money sweat, if you will. And the Creative Real Estate Podcast didn't exactly attract somebody who's like, okay, I've got all this money. Which podcast should I listen to know where to put my money? Creative real estate. No, that's if you don't have money. Let me figure out something else, because I've got lots of money. So I need to find something better. And so I just felt like the only way that they were going to find, the only way my perfect avatar was going to find me is if I was adding value to my perfect avatar. If I had the right title, if I had the right questions to ask, if I was inviting the right guests on my show to add value to my perfect avatar. And so it wasn't easy, but I ended up putting it up for sale. And I think it's funny. I told 5 people about it, and that's it. And I got one person whose offer was obviously lower than my lowest, because they backed out pretty quick. 3 people that were above $50,000. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sell it. And randomly enough, because I cared so much about my podcast and the listeners, even though I had 3 higher offers, I sold it to the lowest offer, because I felt like he was more authentic and cared about adding value to other people. And like, this was my baby. I spent years building it to what it was, and I didn't want it to go to bad parents. And the other 3 were amazing. They were all in a mastermind, but the guy that I sold it to was more, just had a lot more care I just want to add value. The other ones were like, you have a big listenership, I want to make money with it. So I sold it to the cheapest one. Cheapest, that's terrible. Edit that out. I sent it to the lowest offer for good reasons. But yeah, any question that you have about podcasting, I'd be more than willing to.
Yeah, Adam, let's just pick one up real quick, because I don't know I know a lot of podcasters, and we've interviewed a ton of them. I don't know if anyone else, maybe I do, but I certainly haven't had a conversation with anyone else that's actually sold their podcast. So just hit on that for a second. How did you come up with the valuation? What was like when you decided to sell? It sounds like you're still podcasting, so why not just launch a new show and keep this one going?
Yeah, I wanted it to keep going, but I read this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and it just made me think I don't want to be spread thin. I want to put all of my eggs in a basket that I think is going to be the most beneficial for everybody. So yeah, I could have easily done that, but we had lost this. We sold last year, and I think April or May was the transaction. We had lost like $500,000 or so on a real estate transaction that we backed out of after raising the money and getting all the commitments and spending all the time. We backed out of a deal because of COVID, and we didn't want to hurt anyone's. And so I thought, well, if somebody will buy it, that'll at least put a little bit of money in the bank, right? So that's why there's a couple reasons. I didn't want to kill it. I didn't think that I was the best parent for it. I didn't think that it served me. As bad as that sounds, I think that when you start a podcast, it should serve you. So I understand if you're like, oh, what a crook, what a criminal. He's trying to make his podcast make him money. Well, I think if you start a podcast, it should definitely serve you.
Hey,
And,
Adam, can I
go
jump in real quick? Because I just think people need to understand that point. Like, this takes so much work, and people just really don't understand what it takes to make a podcast come to life. And what you're saying resonates with me big time, because when I launched my show, it was a similar thing. It was all about, hey, I want to get investors, but I named it something that was pretty vague for them, right? Target market insights. It doesn't yell passive multifamily investing. So I kind of went through a similar thing. We kind of tweaked our branding and changed the name to include multifamily marketing. But I understand completely where you're coming from, and I think what people have to understand is that if you're going to go and pour into this, I mean, we're not charging people to listen to the podcast. So in some way or some capacity, you have to get value back out of it. And if you're not, then you're going to be like one of the 20, how many ever shows go to the graveyard and never see the light of day. So it's absolutely not only fair, but we would expect you to get value out of a show you spend your time, your energy to create. So just wanted to clarify that real quick. I know we got a little bit of time left here, and I wanted to just make sure we hit on the what you're doing right now, because you've now launched a new show. But then you also have launched kind of a business and an enterprise to help other podcasters not make the mistakes that you just kind of talked about. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And let's give the listener a couple of actionable takeaways with what we're doing. So what I'm doing currently is I helped a few people launch podcasts in the past for free. They were just friends of mine, and I met them at conferences, and I poured into them, and they kept doing really well and getting lots of listeners. And so what I ended up doing is when we lost all this money on a deal, I said, I'm going to make this podcasting company more of a real company. So it's been going for about a year as we record. And we've just been pouring into dozens of people for post-production. Our big thing there is we want to take every single thing off your plate. So you just push record, it goes to the cloud. We take care of it all. And additionally, I started figuring out what is it that made that one podcast of mine grow, and what is it that helped other people's podcasts be so big. And so I started figuring out these hacks, and I'll give a couple of cool marketing tips if you have a podcast or if you're going to have a podcast that you can do. One of them is if you can go to a website called answerthepublic.com, and what you'll do is you'll look at your industry and you'll look to see what people are already asking, and you'll see what podcast episodes you already have, or you can create one from scratch as well. But what you can do is you get a podcast episode that's already taking a lot of traction and it's part of Answer the Public. Well, you've got two really good things. Now you can put some Facebook money behind it. So it's one episode, one Facebook ad, and you put as much as you can to grow that one episode, which starts to get most people to find you because you're answering what they already want to know, and it's an episode that's already getting traction. That's one thing that I recommend. Another one is blog post, going to people who have blogs and that have a good following in your industry. So you can work with somebody who has doctors or engineers or other types of passive investors that might be your avatar. So you can go there and you can actually put up banner ads where your show is the featured podcast on that subject in front of those engineers or those IT professionals or those doctors or attorneys or whatever. This is how you want to be there in front of where they already are. But additionally, on this second way of marketing a podcast is it's very easy for you to get in front of podcasters that already are on the app that are already looking for a new show. And so with our clients, another place that we put marketing dollars, and you can too, is there's all these podcast networks where people go in order to look for a new good show. And so you can spend a few dollars to get your banner ad placed in front of people, in front of the three different titles, the three different subjects that your podcast is about, the genres that you've selected. And if you pay enough, you can get featured also in the professional category and the featured category. So you'll be in 5 different places on that blog where people are already looking for a new podcast to listen to. And the last one that I'll say is private messaging campaign. It works really well if you can get a third party to do it. We do this for other people as a third party. But if it's not that way, then you at least should have a virtual assistant or a best friend or an employee do it, because it's going to come across so much better from somebody else supporting you and adding value to you and pushing you in front of others than it will if you on your own say, you have to listen to my podcast. It just comes across a little wrong. So anyway, what we do, speaking of Meetup, by the way, John, we go to generally 3 different social media platforms. I like starting with meetup.com, linkedin.com, and then Facebook in that order, mostly because most people don't go to Meetup to find their target people. So it's a lot easier to move it along in a place like that. LinkedIn, because it's a professional platform, and then Facebook, just because, all of these places are very searchable. But you try to find your perfect avatar, or a third party helps you find the avatar and connect with them only with questions only. And so that's critical. You don't say, hey, listen to John Katzman's podcast. Here's the link. You just say something. Oh, I see that you're getting into multifamily investing. What's your experience so far? That's the first one, right? And then they'll come at you and they'll say, oh yeah, I've been fix and flipping for 3 years. And then we might say, oh, that's awesome. Like what's the best experience and the worst experience you've had doing fix and flips? I'm super interested, never done one myself. And so they'll come back and say, oh, this one time and this other time. And then we go, well, what podcasts are you listening to trying to get into multifamily? I'm always looking for recommendations. And they say, oh, I'm listening to Joe Fairless and Rod Cleef or something like that. And then I might say, oh, Joe's is really good. I wish it was more about multifamily. Have you ever heard of John Katzman's? It's all about multifamily. I'd be more than happy to send you the link. I'm listening to it right now. And they say, oh, yeah, please send me the link. And we get them the link. Anyway, long story short, it's a private message campaign that ultimately leads to them subscribing, listening, giving feedback, giving a rating and a review, downloading again, listening again, because we keep staying in front of them. So those 3 things I think would be really powerful. One Facebook ad with that link that I shared before about the public. The 2 different blogs that you can spend money to put your show and feature it. and then the 3 different social media platforms that you can use to connect with people and do direct messages. And by the way, do not copy and paste. You'll get flagged immediately, especially in meetup.com. Can't even copy and paste one time on Meetup. It won't let you.
Wow, man. Powerful insights right there. Adam, thank you for sharing that. I mean, you gave 3 good things, right? So first and foremost, understanding that there's answerthepublic.com, which that's a great website in general. I would say, even if you're looking for content ideas, if you're a writer and you're just running into some issues and trying to figure out what to write, go to answerthepublic.com. Great resource there. Check that out. See what content you have already that works well. And then you can start to generate, some paid ads, some Facebook ads, things like that to help drive to that content. You talked about the banner ads and getting on some of those popular blogs, which I think makes a ton of sense. And then this private message campaign sounds like a great opportunity to really get in front of some people, especially if you're doing it on Meetup where you already know their interests because they're a part of, 3 different real estate groups or whatever the case may be. You already know what they're interested in. So you could really be laser focused in that regard. The one thing that I heard, though, was a lot of back and forth with the conversation and a lot of patience, probably, right? To reach out to these people, not copying and pasting. So you really are engaging and having new conversations with all of these people. Just real quick, how much effort and time does it take to do something like that? And I imagine this is why it probably works better to just partner with a company like yours as opposed to trying to take this on as an endeavor someone does by themselves.
There's quite a bit of time that is involved, and what I'll do in the beginning is outline who the avatar is, who the podcaster is, what they want to achieve, where we want to send them, how we want to send them. And we spend a little bit of time researching multiple different episodes to be able to answer certain questions. So if we're reaching out to chefs, it's a chef podcast or something. We want to research some of the mother sauces. We want to research what the reductions are, what all of these types of ideas that chefs often deal with. We want to have a few of those and listen to a lot of the episodes to kind of see, when does this answer? So if somebody's talking about a mother sauce being unstable and falling apart, then we can say, well, you got to hear Chef John Kasman's, episode 391. He goes into slow detail on how to make that one sauce not unstable anymore because it used to fall apart for me. Want me to send you the link? Anyway, it takes a lot. I would say if they're going to do it they shouldn't do it on their own, but they should at least have somebody on their team. But my team, we have 10 full-time staff, and we are serving about 11 people. So, and we're very maxed out for the podcast marketing. We can grow as big as we want, as fast as we can on the post-production. That's already systemized, but I got to be involved in this. I would say it takes me a ton of time and each person about almost a full-time job for one person. So you probably want to hire one full-time person if you want it to go really far. And you can scrape data on different websites, and you can skip trace their information and then friend them on these 3 platforms as well. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I mean, it's probably just cheaper to work with us, to be honest, because we've got the systems down. So
not only cheaper, I think part of this is also the resources at the time it takes to learn, right? I mean, just the amount of effort it takes for you to go out there, figure out what works, what doesn't work, the language, the words to avoid. When do I start to, share the podcast versus waiting for, the information? What if they don't engage right away? There's so many questions, right? So yes, you can explore yourself, but most people who have a podcast are probably looking to grow it because they have another business or something else that they're trying to focus on, and this is not their primary source of income. So it probably makes sense to outsource kind of those elements there. Adam, I really appreciate your time today. You gave us a lot of great information, both on the meetup and how to grow the meetup, as well as podcasting, some of the mistakes or lessons learned that you have. For folks who want to learn more about maybe the podcast resources or the services that you have to offer for podcasters or those folks looking to grow, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Definitely just go to growyourshow.com. Growyourshow.com. It rhymes. It's simple. It's fast. And they can schedule time with me, and they can kind of see what it is we do on there as well.
All right, growyourshow.com. And I know you also have kind of a free download available. Would you mainly just give us a quick tip of what that download is?
Yeah. We created a PDF of all the equipment that you would never need. And from, a mic that goes from $20 to a mic that's $500 and everything in between that you might need for your show. We put it all on one PDF so you can see things that we've personally vetted and they work really well for your podcast. And you can, estimate wherever you are on your budget. You can kind of figure that out easy. So it would just be growyourshow.com/PDF if they wanted that.
Excellent. Adam, thank you for coming on the show. Pleasure talking to you. You take care.
Thank you.